Hello, my name is Clay Gilbert. I am the author of two books published by PDMI Publishing. Anna, Children of Ava Way, Book 1, and also Dark Road to Paradise. Anna is a science fiction novel, science fiction romance. It's first in my Children of Ava Way series. And Dark Road to Paradise is a horror novel, a vampire romance, and it's first in my Tales of the Night Kind series. I also work as the chief editor for PDMI Publishing, who published both Dark Road and Anna in 2013. And that's my background as a published author. I also self-published a young adult novel called Eternity in early 2013 before I got my contract with PDMI. And they're going to be bringing out a new edition of that sometime either this year or next year. But I'm not here to talk about my books. I'm here to talk about the idea of using public appearances to establish an identity for your author brand and to heighten awareness of your author brand. Now, first let's understand the concept of an author brand. The literary landscape is a crowded place these days. The book world is a crowded marketplace. More books are being published today than there have been for a very long time in history. There are millions of books being published every year. And paradoxically, it seems that literacy rates and the level at which people read is decreasing. Therefore, we have a very competitive literary marketplace and comparatively few readers. So we have a double challenge. We have to make a connection between ourselves and our readers, and we have to give them a reason why they want to read our books. That's where the idea of the public appearance comes in. There are two types of public appearances I'm going to be talking about. One of those is the book signing, or the autograph signing as it's called sometimes. The other is the convention appearance. They're both valuable, but for slightly different reasons. First of all, let's start off with the book signing. I began my professional career as an author in 2013. And since I was first published in 2013, I've been fortunate enough to do close to a dozen book signings, thanks to the great folks at PDMI Publishing, who've been very kind, very supportive, and continue to be so. I haven't always sold books, or sold very many books at my book signings, but I have made connections with my readers at those book signings. I always sell a book or two at my signings, but I think it's because I make a connection with my readers. And that's the point I want to emphasize to you, and I'll probably be emphasizing it a number of more times during this presentation. Public appearances are not about you or us as authors. They're about our readers. They're about the people that are in that bookstore or at that convention who come up and talk to you. Because these may be people who've read your book and who show up to have you sign a copy and to find out who this person is who wrote this book that they enjoyed. Or they may be people just browsing around the bookstore who don't know who in the world you are. And with those people, it's even more important to make a connection. You're sitting in a bookstore behind a table with a banner with your book cover on the banner. I have one that has the book cover of Anna on it, and I put it out in front of the table so people can see the book art, and then they can identify that with the stack of books that's on the table. And on one level, the table tells them who you are. It tells them this is an author signing his or her books. It also can act as sort of a border or barrier between you and the audience, the reader. It's your job to break down that barrier and establish a connection between yourself and the person who showed up to the book signing or who's in the bookstore and happens to notice your table. If you get them to come over to the table and talk to you, you've won half the battle right there. You've established an initial connection. Then if they ask you what your book is about, and you can articulate the story of your novel in such a way that also connects personally with that reader, you'll generally sell a book, and certainly you'll establish yourself in the mind of that reader. I'll tell you a story from my last book signing in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I had a 12-year-old girl come up to my table. Now, my science fiction novel, Anna, is about a young girl. The title character is an 18-year-old young woman. She's an alien, and she's an outsider in her culture. She has different ideas from the other people on her planet. She wants to explore the universe. Her culture says, no, stay at home. Don't go out there. Anna doesn't want that. She wants to be out in space exploring. She looks different from the other people of her race. Her eyes are blue, and no one's eyes are blue on Ava Way. Her hair is strawberry blonde. No one else's hair is gold and red on Ava Way. People don't understand Anna, and she wants to be understood. And that's something that a teenager can understand. And this girl who came up to my table at my book signing, she was 13. A good bit younger than Anna, but the same age as Anna's friend Liara, who you would meet if you read the book, but that's neither here nor there. The story made a connection. The cover art made a connection. She automatically recognized Anna was an alien. She's an alien, isn't she? I said, yeah. What's the book about? I said, well, it's about this young girl from another world who wants to explore other planets. She wants to get off her world and explore other planets. And she's kind of an outcast. She's a misfit. She doesn't really fit in. And then this guy from Earth crash lands on her planet. And he's kind of an outcast because he has a birth defect. And they fall in love. And then a lot of crazy stuff happens because an alien falling in love with a human on Anna's planet is recipe for bad trouble. That was enough to get that little girl to want to read that book. She went and asked her parents for her birthday money, and she took a copy of the book home after I signed it, and she said several times to me, thank you for signing this awesome book for me. She didn't know it was an awesome book. She hadn't read it yet. But in her mind, it was an awesome book because I had made a personal connection with her. That is what a book signing is for. It is not for putting your autograph on a book. It is not for ringing a cash register and generating royalties. It is for establishing a connection of identity between yourself and your reader, because that is the investment that is going to pay dividends far beyond royalty checks, far beyond book sales. A connection between yourself and your reader is going to sustain your entire career because they will stick with you. That's the value of a book signing. Another person I had come to my most recent signing was an older man. He was drawn to Anna's cover because she was clearly an alien. And he was a fan of classic science fiction from the golden age of science fiction. He was a fan of Robert Heinlein, of Ray Bradbury, of Frank Herbert, all of which were great inspirations to me and continue to be so. He asked me who my inspirations were. He wasn't so much interested in the story as he was in who my inspirations were, who helped me generate my ideas. And I said Frank Herbert, Robert Heinlein, Ray Bradbury. I said hopefully my story has some echoes of these classic, wonderful storytellers who inspired me and who inspired my career. And he bought a book. He bought it in hardcover, and he wanted me to sign it, and I signed it. And I said, I think I put something like "Keep Dreaming" in it, because I always try to encourage people who come to my signings and convention appearances that what I do as a writer is not something that's out of reach for them, and that no dream they have is out of reach. That's another thing that's important in terms of personal appearances. Emphasize, let them know what your book is about, sure, but let them know what you are about. One of the things I am about as an author and as a person is encouraging people to be what they want to be, to achieve their dreams. I write stories about people who achieve their dreams. Anna achieved the dream of getting off her world and restoring some of the lost culture to her people. And that's something I'm about also. I wanted to become a writer from the time I was 4. I wanted to be a published author, and I got there. It was a dream I wanted to achieve. And I tell people at my signings and my public appearances, if you have something that you dream you can do, then you can do it. That message speaks loudly to people. It's an important message. It's important to give people a reason to read your book, but it's important to let them know that you care about them beyond being just a person at an autograph table. I would care about the experience of talking to someone who was interested in my books, whether they bought a book or not. I feel like a lottery winner when someone even asks me what my book is about. I feel like a lottery winner when I see a smile on the face of someone who came up to my signing table, whether or not he or she bought a book. They expressed interest in my vision and my story. They shared a little bit of their story with me. That's what it's all about. Maybe they won't bring any cash to the signing. I have lots of times I do public appearances and people show up without cash, and they'll say, "Are you on Amazon.com?" And I'll say, "Yeah, my books are on Amazon. They're available in hardcover, ebook, and paperback." "Well, I'll check you out on Amazon." And a lot of times they do. Because I show them that I care about them. That my stories are not just books about aliens and vampires. They're about people with dreams. People who have passions and fears and goals. Like I have passions and fears and goals, and like I know my readers have passions and fears and goals. Those are the human emotions that we want to connect with at a personal appearance. And a personal appearance is the best place to do it because they can see your face and you can see their face. Then if they haven't bought the book at the signing, there's a pretty good shot they'll go home, look at Amazon.com, remember your name, and buy a book. Give them a business card. Write your name down on a piece of paper. Write a little slogan, even if they didn't ask you to sign a book. Sometimes I bring posters that have the book cover art to sign in case I run out of books at a signing. That's only happened about once. But once in a while it might happen. And if you have posters with book art on them, you can sign those and they'll know what the book cover looks like and they can look it up on Amazon and order it. Meanwhile, they have an autograph already, so they'll remember you for that. You have to find a way to make a connection with your audience. Public appearances aren't about you. They're not about you showing off. They're about you showing your reader, your audience, that you care about making a connection. So that's book signings. But there's another topic I want to talk about in terms of using public appearances to maximize your author brand exposure, and that's convention appearances. Now, I'm a genre writer. I write what I grew up reading and loving: science fiction, horror, and fantasy. I probably will always be a genre writer because that's the stuff I like to read. I like the use of metaphors as a lens through which to translate and interpret human experience. I think that imaginative fiction, unless it's backed by human experience, isn't worth a whole lot. But I do think that imaginative fiction provides perhaps the most effective lens to translate the human experience when it is allowed to do so, and I certainly strive to do that in my fiction. But I'm not talking about my fiction. I'm talking about the experience of conventions now. Conventions are a particular phenomenon that grew up around genre fiction. First science fiction convention, I think, occurred in may have been as early as the 1930s. I want to say it's the 1950s, but anyway, sometime between the 30s and the 50s, science fiction conventions started happening. And they are, for those of you who've never been to a convention, they are big gatherings of fans. They usually take place in in a hotel. There are panel discussions where people talk about various books, authors talk about their works, and there are autograph signings. So if you are an author who makes a public appearance at a convention, you get to talk about your work, you get to talk about the work of the authors who inspired you, and you get to sign some books. All three of the facets of a convention experience, convention appearance, give you three different arenas in which you can make a personal connection with your reader. You can show them through talking about your influences. You can show them what inspired you. You can tell personal narratives about your experiences as a writer, or just as your experiences as a person. And when you're on a panel with other authors, they get to see you interacting with your peers, who may be other authors that they're more familiar with than they are with you. And if you're on a panel with an author who has 5 or 6 books out already, and they have a fan base, then you can build your own fan base by the connection of you being on this panel with this author that they've actually heard of. So that's another perk to being a convention attendee. But even more important than that is the phenomenon that occurs of breaking down the border between fan and creative person that occurs at cons. Because at a signing, the author sits behind a table most of the time. Yeah, you can get out and walk around the bookstore or wherever. You can get out and mingle with the attendees, but most of the time you're sitting behind an autograph table. At a convention, that's not so. At a convention, if everyone's staying at the same hotel, the author gets up and gets in the elevator and comes down from his or her room, just like you, as an attendee, get on the elevator and come down to the lobby. Authors have interests too. If an author is attending a con, as conventions are called, 10 to 1, they have interests in the fandom areas that are being dealt with at that con. You might go to a screening of one of your favorite movies and see one of your favorite authors there. You might go to the costume contest and see one of your favorite authors sitting beside you. You might come down in the morning for coffee at the hotel coffee shop and see one of your favorite authors there. Conventions afford the opportunity for one-on-one connection between author and audience that no other public appearance affords. I've been on the staff at DragonCon, a major multi-genre southeastern science fiction convention, for the past 7 years, since before I was a published author. My work on staff at DragonCon afforded me the opportunity to meet many people who are now my peers in the field. It helped me to make connections in the literary world when I was still an unpublished author, when I was still an aspiring author. And now that I am a published author, attendance at conventions helps me to boost awareness of my brand. It helps me to connect with people who have read my book. And it helps me to make myself available and aware to people who haven't read my books. It helps me generate awareness of my books for those people who have never read them. It's an invaluable experience. It helps your fans or your potential fans to see you as a person, to see you having enthusiasms and fandoms like they have, to see you doing things like going to a movie or hanging out in the hotel lobby just like they're doing. And it gives you one more opportunity to tell one-on-one your story. And I don't mean just the story that you wrote in the book. I mean your story. The things you're interested in. I'm a fan of the British science fiction TV show Doctor Who, for instance. I've been a fan of Doctor Who since I was a kid. I had the opportunity back in 1983 when I was 12 to meet a whole bunch of the cast members. And it was amazing to me to see that these people had similar, they all had things they were interested in just like me. And going to a convention where all those cast members were in one place was pretty amazing. It broke down the wall between creative person and audience. And for a writer at a con, that's the same thing. You get to talk to other writers about who their influences were. I got to sit a number of times with Robert Jordan, the great, sadly deceased fantasy author and creator of the Wheel of Time series, which I dearly love, even though I don't really write fantasy literature. I'm writing an urban fantasy novel right now, but I don't write the kind of epic fantasy Robert Jordan wrote. But at any rate, I got to sit down with him at DragonCon in the hotel restaurant at breakfast a number of times and talk to him about his passion for history, his love for mythology. We didn't hobnob about what was going on in the current book he was writing. We talked about his interests as a guy, as a person, and yes, as a writer. I talked to him about the fact that, I've taught English on the college level. Talked to him about the military a little bit. My dad was in the Navy, and Robert Jordan graduated from the Citadel. I'm also a fan of Pat Conroy, who wrote a great book about, well, it was loosely based on his experiences as a student at the Citadel. It was called Lords of Discipline, and we talked about that. I talked about that with Robert Jordan a little bit. The point is, a personal connection has been forged between myself and a number of my favorite authors just by virtue of my going to cons, to conventions. And the same thing can be true for your readers. They can see you interact with your heroes. They can see that you have interests like they have interests. And they can interact with you on a personal level that isn't just coming up to an autograph table and standing there while you sign their book and then going away. For that entire weekend at a convention, you are immersed in the same atmosphere as these writers and actors and artists that you admire. And for us as authors, we are immersed in the same atmosphere that our audience is immersed in. And the wall between author and audience breaks down at conventions. And that breaking down is good for author brand. It is good to be seen by your audience as a person with common experiences to theirs. A person who has dreams, who has passions, who has fears and interests and things that they do as a person. Not a person who's closed up in their study all the time, writing the next book. It's well and good to be thought of as a storyteller, but let us not lose sight of our stories. And I don't mean necessarily the ones in our novels. I mean our personal narratives, the stories that tell our readers what we believe in, the things that are important to us, and the stories that let our readers know how we got to be where we are and how they can get to be where they want to be. I want to come back again to something that I tell my readers at every con appearance, at every autograph signing, at every personal appearance I make. If you have a dream, you can achieve it. Anna, in my novel, has a dream of going to space, going into space from her world, of leaving her small planet behind and going and seeing what is out beyond what she calls the sea of stars. And she achieves that dream by the novel's end. My great dream was to become a published author from the time I was 4. I achieved that. I have a long way to go because I'm just a newcomer to the literary landscape. There might be a few people who know my name, but not very many people. Every time I have an opportunity to have a public appearance, and this is a public appearance here at Promo Day, it's an opportunity for connection. It's not an opportunity for Clay Gilbert to show off. It's an opportunity for Clay Gilbert to make a connection between myself and those who hear my words. And hopefully those who read my words, or who will read my words. We are all human beings. We all have common experiences, no matter how diverse our backgrounds. And perhaps the most important thing about being an author is communication and connection between ourselves and the people who read our books or who might read our books. If it's not about forging a connection between me and my audience, if it's not about letting them into my world and hopefully them letting me into theirs, then what do we do it for? So to wrap up, I would like to go back to the idea of establishing a consciousness of authorial brand through public appearances. Public appearances get you out into the eyes and hopefully the hearts of your readers or your potential readers. They give your audience a chance to know you as a person. If they care about your personal narrative, they will care more about the narrative in your books. If they already know the narrative in your books, they will care even more about that narrative when they see it reflected in who you are as a person. So take the opportunity to schedule book signings, or have your publisher schedule book signings. Get out, meet your public. If you have an opportunity to be on the staff or on the guest list of a convention, do it. It'll get you elbow to elbow with your audience. It will let you communicate your story to them, and it will let them communicate their stories to you, and that's what it's all about. I'd like to thank everybody for listening to my webinar today. I am Clay Gilbert. I'd like to thank my publishers at PDMI Publishing, and I'd like to thank Joe Linsdell Feliciani for the wonderful opportunity to present at Promo Day. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, and remember, if you have a dream, you can achieve it. Thank you so much.